This is the heart of the RSPB's Abernethy Nature Reserve, and we are just north of the Cairngorm Plateau here. This section of the forest is perhaps the oldest that we have. The Great Forest of Caledon covered perhaps 1.5 million hectares at its prime, and now we're right down to perhaps 1% of that. People often think of the Cairngorms as being the mountain area, but I like to think of these forests as being the skirt, the edge around the mountains. A superb mix of big old pine trees, of young pine that have just grown up. We've got heather here and blaeberry, and a mix of juniper and birch and rowan all about us. It holds some of the rarest animal and plant species that we have. About 800 of the 3,500 species we have here are in some way nationally rare or scarce. So on a UK basis and on a Scottish basis, it's a very important forest. We've come now to the edge of the forest here at Abernethy, and perhaps one of our most spectacular viewpoints. We have there the monster of Cairngorm there up in the cloud, and just below that is Strathnethy. So this looks like a big forest, and while it is a big forest in UK terms, our plans are to increase it by something like half as much again. Here we're looking across the tops of the trees to the Pass of Rivone, and in the Pass of Rivone you can see the trees there pushing up to what would be the projected tree line. If you carry on that line across the hills here, you start to get a sense of how big the forest would be were the trees right the way up to the projected tree line. And on this hill that's in front of us, the projected tree line is halfway between the upper rocky scar and the summit of this hill. It's a spectacularly ambitious plan, really. We're talking here about something which in the current management approach we're taking would take 500 years. And what we're planning to do is to try and reduce that timescale to 200 years. If we get tree cover on the area that we're targeting here, we could increase the pine forest area for the UK by an extra 8 to 10%. It might seem surprising to some people that the RSPB is moving on with such a big project. Our ethos is not just about the birds, it's about the whole habitat network, it's about the whole suite of species. So our plan really is to make the forest bigger for its own sake. The other thing about a small forest is that if it's hit by some kind of catastrophe like a flood or fire or a gale, the impacts of that dramatic event are felt much more on a small forest than on a big forest. So I've come now to the edge of the forest. The edge of the forest is here behind me, and around me now is just a fantastic regeneration here. Fantastic young pine trees growing up all around me. And this is what it's all about. This is what's going to make the forest of the future. And all of the seedlings that I can see around me here, I really think must have come from this big pine tree behind me. It's the start of this 200-year vision that we have to expand the forest, and this is the early stages of that. This is one of our research plots at the edge of the forest, and we're here exploring what makes regeneration happen. On the outside of the fence here, we have an area which has been left unburnt and unfenced. Here is another area which has been fenced but left unburnt. This next area here has been fenced, obviously, and has been burnt. And you can see some buckets in there which are there to catch the seed rain that falls from the trees here. And what we found here is that the burnt areas can give us perhaps 20 times as much regeneration as the areas that have been unburnt. The fence at the moment doesn't seem to really make much of a difference. We do just as well outside the deer fence with pine regeneration as we do inside. So this is what we want. We want more of this burning to give us more of that regeneration at the forest edge where we get the seed rain. Up here, away from the forest edge and the seed source, is where we're going to have to plant trees. And we're going to do that by planting small patches of trees. Those will grow and expand and take the forest up to the tree line. In 200 years' time, the boulder I'm sitting on would be surrounded by pine scrub. I would have walked up through mature pine forest, almost all the way up here until this wind-clipped environment will have made the trees much more stunted. And were I to then take a walk up Strathnethy towards Shelterstone, I'd be walking through some of that magnificent pine forest almost all the way. And what a spectacular forest that will be.